I forgot to do that. No one reminded me, but there we go. All right. And people are still coming in, so I'll make sure I can have my video on share. Hold on just a second. There we go. All right. So, topic one, logical comparison and precedence, which essentially will represent the order of how things occur. Our objective is evaluate logical comparisons to restrict the rows returned based on two or more conditions. Apply the rules of precedence. Rules of precedence, remember, it says how does things, in what order do things occur? And basically with expressions and evaluations and calculations, it's usually can be important to know that particular part of how these expressions are evaluated. All right, so the purpose. So not too many things depend on just one condition. The setup is that there's usually more than one thing that you need to consider. For instance, if you want to go to college, you probably need good grades and the tuition money to pay for it. If you have extra money, you could either save it or spend it. If you want to go to a movie, you may want to go this weekend, or you may not want to sit in the first 10 rows. So these are conditions, et cetera, et cetera. In SQL, it is often desirable to restrict the rows returned by a query, and we're going to learn how to do that. I know this is, a basic approach, but generally there are two or more conditions. So as a manager of a fast food restaurant, you may need to, spelling error there, know the names of your staff who are cooks or order takers. My OCD, I have to correct that, or else. All right, that's better. That may just stump me if I let that slide, so sorry. All right, so condition operators such as and, not, and or make these types of requests easy to do. So that's kind of the setup of what we're going to begin to think about as we're building our queries to pull data. So logical conditions, we do have logical conditions, and they combine the result of two component conditions to produce a single result. And that's a long way of saying that if you're wanting one condition or another, one condition and another, that's what we're looking for as far as our combining conditions. So for example, to attend, 1 second. To attend a rock concert, you need to buy a ticket and have transportation to get there. So that opportune word here is and both conditions, if both conditions are met, remember that. And this, you can go to the concert. And this is, how many of you heard of a concept called the truth table? This is based on that logic. If you're wondering, the X and the Y and things like that. We're not going to go that direction in math, but as far as logic, you want to think that way. So what if you can't get transportation? Can you go? So this is the whole idea. If both conditions are not met, then obviously you can't go to the movie and you have to stay at home and watch streaming TV, which is probably better, right? Anyway, so another logical condition combines two components with the or, and you probably have an intuition about what this means. So either one of the conditions is true or the other is true. So an example, employees will receive a raise either by having perfect attendance or by meeting their monthly sales quota. So if an employee meets either of these two conditions, the employee gets a raise. So the or condition in your logic table, one or the other condition is true. So to expand this even further, as we belabor the point, the logic cooperator combines the results of two or more conditions, and a result is returned only if only if, remember that, only if the overall result of the condition is true. This is the whole concept of a truth table. So and returns true if both conditions are true, or returns true if either conditions are true. And not returns true if the condition is false. Remember that, and or not are logical operators. And sometimes it gets a little bit confusing about when to use these, but we will develop a process to understand when and how they're used here as we go through this lesson. So in SQL, in this query below, the results returned will be rows that satisfy both conditions specified in the where. Now remember we use the where clause to limit rows. This is how we set up conditions. So if you take a look at this, select last name, department ID, salary from employees where department ID is less than 50 and salary is greater than 50, excuse me, and salary is greater than 12,000. So as you see, our 3 employees are in department ID 90, greater than 50, and their salary is greater than 12,000. So that's the and logical operator. So both conditions are true in this result table, right? Does that make sense to everyone? You see that? You over here, all right. Right, and that's essentially how the and works. So here's another example. Select last name, hire date, job ID for employees, where hire date is greater than January 1, 1998, and job ID like, and we're using our like, and as you see, both conditions are true. You get these 3 employees. Woohoo. So that should give you a good idea. The only results, and remember this, both conditions have to be true to get a result. And sometimes that may seem confusing, but that's what happens in this type of logical operator. Now the or operator, and remember this is either or, either one of the conditions is true or the other is true. So in the where clause, if you use the or condition, remember one of the conditions must be satisfied to produce a result. So if you take a look at this query, select department name, manager ID, location ID from departments where location ID is equal to 2,500 or manager ID is equal to 124. As you see here, we have manager ID here and 2,500 here. So it's going to return both of those. And it seems you know, like you should have an intuition about one or the other. It does get a little bit confusing about what the result may be based on that logical operator. So just remember that. So in other words, and I just said that. The not operator, and it is used often. If you think about it, if you don't want something to be returned, but everything else, and you know, this is probably when you want to use the not operator. So an example of this, using the not in, basically we want everything not in this list. That's usually the case. So here, department ID, location ID from departments where location ID is not in that list, 1,700 or 1,800. So if it's not in that list, and you see here we have 1,500, 1,400, which are not in that list, right? So this is when, and just as I've stressed before, there are several ways to put these logical operators together to get the desired result. Remember, this is not essentially setting one criteria over another. And especially when you go through the exercises, you'll notice that there may be, I'll say maybe, doesn't necessarily mean there will be, but there may be, more than one way to produce the result, and that's the key. All right, so that's the and, or, and not logical operators. Now, we need to take a look at what happens first, or what's the order or the rules of precedence. And this can become a challenge if you let it. SQL is usually more common sense oriented than you think, for the most part. Definitely different than some of the other scripting languages most of the time, but it does set you up for a level of overthinking, so don't do that. So consider this following statement. In what order do you think the expressions are evaluated and calculated? So if you look at this, we have select last name, we're concatenating a space with salary times, we have a calculation in there as employee raise where department ID is N50 and first name like that, or so that could be quite confusing as to what do you think happens first based on, you can't really tell from the results, right? What do you think? Who wants to volunteer? What do you think happens first, specifically in this where clause? Which is do we? So what do you think? Does Vera raises? Go ahead, Vera.
My thought process is the where it's like if we were putting parentheses around it, it would be either department ID would be the starting and first name is like this. That would be the end of the parentheses, and then the or is its own last name like
Right,
this. So it's between those two. And so within that or there's also the and. So it would have to meet the department ID and the first name.
right. So we don't have the parentheses. So which is it going to evaluate this and first
Um,
or the or first?
I think it would do the or first logically. That like yeah, there's no parentheses, so maybe it goes left to right, but in to be strategic, you want like an or statement, it should be evaluated first because it only has to be one or the other, so it would be
Right.
better for it to evaluate last name first.
So your term strategic, you have to be very careful because the or is going to open up the results more than the and, right?
Hmm.
Based on what your requirements are. So there has to be some rules embedded in here that help you understand which one. So you're correct. Generally, you just want to separate it by parentheses and then there's no mistake. But there are a rules of precedence as far as what happens first. And there are a few basic rules. So here we go. Notice that the and operator is evaluated before the or. Now, it has nothing to do with its position. It's just basically, you think it's left or right, but it isn't. The and is always evaluated first. And here are essentially the basic rules, precedents for order of operation. Any calculation is evaluated first. Any concatenation is second, and your select, any type of comparison is evaluated, is or is not null, like or not is evaluated, and then not and between, and then not and or. Or is absolutely last. And you can probably think of why, right? Because of or does open it up like one or the other. Generally, you want to be very careful when you do that. But this is, so when you have those non-separated, parts of your clauses, your not is always going to be evaluated before the and then the and before the or. And that's what I'm indicating here. And this is an important concept to remember because you'll get two different results, or you'll get different results if you don't have the specific logical operators where you think they should be. And sometimes you won't even notice that your results are different. Our database is pretty simple and it might not cause an issue, but I think I do have a couple of examples here. So if we look at this previous query and add additional, first the end condition is evaluated. So all employees working in department 80 or 50 and who have first names starting with C are returned. We were not, I have our first names here. The or clause is then evaluated, returns employees whose last name contains an S. So that's why we know all the calculations and all that happened before, but the and is evaluated first. And so in 80 or 50, and first name begins with C, so that's why you have Curtis. But Curtis is in first name C and 50. So I guess what I want you all to do, take a look at this result table. Does it make sense to you based on this query? If you're looking at the where clause only, can you see how this result matches what we're attempting to reproduce in the select query? So department IDs in 50 or 80 and first name like C. So we have 50, but look, we have department ID 50 here, but the first name. So why do you think this return, if you're just looking at the first name and department ID? Because that would be confusing, right? First thing you see, well, the only result that satisfy that first part of the query is 50 and Curtis. Did you want to comment on that, Vera? Why do we have all these
Sure.
other results?
Yeah, so the reason we have all the other results is because of the or statement. So it evaluated those didn't work, but then it went on and evaluated the or statement, and then those matched.
Exactly. So does everyone see that? If we took out the or statement, we would only have one result, right? Does everyone agree? We're gonna have to, let's test this. So let's bring up our developer. All right, I'll bring it back here. So I'm going to type in that query. And you all can try it as well. Last name. Well, I'm just going to do a simplified version of that. I'm just going to do last name, department ID, and first name. We know the calculation will happen as far as the order of precedence. From employees, where department ID in 50 or 80. And I will show you this. And first name like C, right? So if we take a look at this query and look at those results, so I'm leaving out the or, right? And if we ran this, we only get one row, right? So everyone see that? So we add that or last name, like basically end in S, right? Now if we run it again, we get the Curtis and the rest of those rows, right? Right. Now, in this query, so just so we understand, so did y'all see the difference between that simple query that I built or copied, but we have an additional, so whether this is a mistake or not, why do we have Hartstein in this result table? Can anyone tell me why?
There is an S in his last name.
Aha, because I have %S%. I forgot that on the last, good catch. This is just looking for an S in that or. And there you go. So now we have the rest, because all it was looking for is just an S in the name. Now we get Ernst and Hartstein. All right. So remember that. The and is evaluated first, and then the or. You think we would get a, well, it doesn't really matter the order that they appear left to right. Just remember the and will always be evaluated first. And I would suggest if you're confused about it, just run one or the other, just to see what the results are. That will eliminate any confusion. And this is what I explained here. Whose last name contains an S. All right. So in this next example, the order of the or and have been reversed from the previous slide. So all we did here was took the or and placed it here. Now you probably would say, wait, that shouldn't make a difference. But what's going to be evaluated first? First name like C and last name with that, right? And then the or. Now, does that make sense to everyone? And as you see, the results are different from the last example. And that's where it's important to understand how, these logical operators are evaluated. This is a different result than the other one, right? Here's the other one. Higgins, Morgels, et cetera, and here's that one. As you see, just that different placement made a difference in the results, and this may not be what you want. So the condition here is that it has to have a C, starts with a C, and has an S in the name, and Curtis Davies is the only one, but then it says or in department 50 or 80. That's where you get all these 50s and 80s. Does that make sense? So that's an important thing to recognize, because you see that those results are completely different. Completely different. So the only common record in this is Curtis Davies. The rest of them, and I think Kevin Morgul. So there's only a couple in there that match the criteria. Okay. Yeah. All right. Hopefully everyone grasps that, because that logical operators can really give you a headache if you allow them to. All right. So as Vera pointed out, you can actually add parentheses to help yourself understand, because basically if you add parentheses, those values are always, they're isolated that way. So if you take a look at this, and what I did here, I just added the parentheses around the or statement. So that's evaluated first. So the values in the parentheses are selected. And it doesn't matter, if it's or and, this is evaluated first. And then the and. So all instances of the values in the parentheses containing the letter S, and their last name will be returned. All of this and that. So once again, it can kind of take you on a little journey. Just if you're not sure, the best thing to do is to really have a good idea of what's your result, what are you expecting in your result, and you can break it down. And I would, if you're confused, I would step it down to make sure you can run one part of the query. Like we know that if we ran this part with an and, there's only going to be one record. But if we're looking for all of the individuals that have S in their name, etc. Right, does that make sense? Did I confuse everyone? Are we okay with it? Thumbs up. All right, so our terminology for this particular topic and or not, and rules of precedence or precedence rules. That is something that Logical operators just really have a good idea of what you're trying to create as far as your results. And that will help you form the logical operators because they can really, as you saw, they can really change based on how you place that and or that or that not. All right. All right. So moving from logical operators, make sure we're going to go to sorting rows. And our objectives here, construct a query to sort and result set in ascending or descending order. State the order in which expressions are evaluated and calculated based on the rules of precedence. So yes, you have to include that when you're talking about ordering, and then construct a query to order a result set using column aliases. You can actually do that. And construct a query to order a result set for single or multiple columns. Yes, you can order by a single column or multiple columns. So by nature, most of us need order in our lives. Well, I think I excel in disorder, but I think most of us would like our lives to be orderly, right? You get up in the morning, you have breakfast. So imagine if each time you had dinner, you had to look in every kitchen drawer or cabinet to find a knife and a fork. Wait, I think I do that anyway. I have no order. But imagine if your life was not ordered, that would be a headache. Ordering, grouping, and sorting makes finding things easier. Yeah, we're all logical beings, right? So biologists group animals in phyla, astronomers group brightness of stars by magnitude, and Java programmers organize code in classes. All great examples of organization. So our everyday lives are ordered in many situations: library books, grocery store shelves, document store, physically and digitally, mostly digitally now. Sorting results in a convenient feature. It is a convenient feature of Oracle SQL. And basically, it creates a way for us to display information, which is pretty important in an orderly way. For database design, and it's still applicable now. And this is the one thing that I've learned in the last 50 years or so. Your businesses have to be orderly, and they're ordered by entities and attributes, tables or connection to tables. And this is the one thing, kind of the overarching thing that you should have or gain an intuition about as far as Oracle SQL. So we have a clause called order by, which basically creates an idea. Well, no, not an idea. It creates order if you would like order in your results. It's convenient. So you can sort information by ascending or descending, but most of the information, or the default, I think that I'm saying here, and ascending is most familiar to us. 1 through whatever, A through whatever. We start at the first component and we go higher. That's ascending. Names in a phone contact list, email, sender, last name, etc. Product categories. These are all alphabetically in ascending order. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc. You need to reference that by singing the little song that you learned in, first grade. So Oracle SQL uses the order by clause to order data. The order by clause can be specified in several ways can specify several ways in which to order rows in a result table. The default sort order is ascending. If you're using nulls, or if there are nulls or you're adding nulls, remember nulls will always appear first. Wait, no, appear last. I have to remember myself. Yeah, nulls will, in ascending, and we'll have to test this, nulls will appear last if you're using the order by. Numeric values are displayed lowest to highest or first. Date values are displayed earliest, first. Character values are displayed in alpha order, A, B, C, D. Null is displayed last, hey, I got it right, in ascending, and first in descending. So if you do it in ascending order by, your nulls will appear last after your actual values. Null first specifies that null are returned before other values. Null last, that's actually a clause that you can use. You can do null first or null last to return the nulls either first or last. Sorry. So here's an example. Select last name, hire date from employees, order by hire date. And remember the default is ascending, so you start at the earliest date. King was hired first and go on to Latke or Zatke, which is hired last. Nice little order. Right. Right. Note the order by clause must be, and notice the syntax of your order by, it must be the last clause in the SQL statement. So select from and then your order by, and then the column that you're using as your order by condition. So if we add the keyword descending, remember with dates, it's going to start with the latest date and list it to the most current or the earliest date. Of course, maybe someday I'll update the values and the dates in that schema, so we're not dealing with, 87. How many of you were born? This is a tangential question. Before 87. Didn't have many raised hands. All right. That's my squirrel moment. All right. Column aliases. Yes, you can use column aliases in your order by clause. Using the column aliases can also organize data. So let's say we're just aliasing the hire date as date started. You can use that, and it has to be enclosed in your parentheses because of the space in your order by. And that's the same thing as using the hire date column name. All right. And all the rules apply. Ascending is the default, etc. All right. That's our order by. Pretty straightforward. How about sorting with other columns? So it is possible to use the order by clause to order output by column that is not listed. And this happens all the time. Basically, you're wanting the output to be in an order where you don't necessarily need the column. So if you take a look at this query, selecting employee ID first name from employees where employee ID is less than 105, order by last name. And basically we're ordering by last name, but we're listing the first name. Does this happen often? Maybe, but it all depends upon what you're trying to accomplish with your report. But maybe this particular individual only wanted to list last or first names, and maybe they can get the last names by seeing the first names. So sorted by the last name, but the last name is not there. All right, as far as order of execution, the order of execution, and this is important, and we saved this for a little bit later because now we've introduced some clauses that in our addition to our select statement, but you really need to know how your system reads when you type in that select statement. How does it actually read it? Right, it actually reads the from clause first, because it's going to look to see if that table exists. So this actually locates and validates the existence of the table. So it reads the from clause first, and then it reads the where clause. So that's going to validate the table. And if you think about it, you want to validate the table first before you try to validate the columns, sort of. But if you validate the tables, then if there's some restrictions, then you want to make sure that that's valid as well, whether it's column, whether it's logical operators, etc. So the from, and then the where, and then the select. So the select is usually evaluated last because the table and the columns or the conditions have already been essentially recognize and validate it. So the key here is the from clause is probably the most important because without the table, then nothing else makes sense. And then finally, the order by in our little simple example. So from, where, select, order by. Just remember that order of execution as far as your system. And that's true of all SQL systems as far as select statements. Generally, you think because the select statement is first, it validates the column, but without the table, the columns, yeah. So the from clause is probably the most important part of your select statement and other statements as well. Any questions about that? Comments? Makes no sense. No, you're all saying SQL is ridiculous. No, it's not. It's useful. All right. You can sort using multiple columns, and I will show you how. So basically, in fact, there's no limit to the number of columns. However, you do have to use kind of common sense. If you have 10 columns that you're sorting by, the results probably won't make sense, but just to interject here. So, but if you want to sort by multiple columns, let's say you want to sort by, here we're sorting by department ID and last name. Now, remember, it sorts by the first column first, and then the second column after the first column is sorted. So you're like, well, what does that mean? If you look at this query, select department ID last name from employees, where department ID is less than or equal to 50, so it's going to be 50, 20, 10. The first thing it's going to sort by is the department ID. It puts them nice ascending order, right? Since we have, and then every column is then sorted by last name. So you see Wayland here is the only individual in that department 10, but in 20 we have Faye and Hartstein, and that's alpha ordered. And then in department 50 of Davis, Matos, Morgos, Raj, and Vargas. See, they're all in alpha order by department ID, and then by last name. Does that make sense to everyone? That can be a little confusing when you're sorting by 2 columns or 3 columns or 4. So it sorts by the column, puts them nicely in order, and then it sorts within each department ID by the last name. All right? And that's what I explained there. So here's another example. Now, this one's a little tricky. I'm sorting by the department, but descending order and then last name. So then it reverses the department sorting, right? But then the last name is ascending. So Davis, they're all there. Faye, Hartstein. So that all looks, it's different, but it's all right, correct? We're just sorting in descending order for departments. Who knows? Someone may request that as a report. Right. And yes, you can differentiate between multiple columns if it's ascending, descending, depending on what you need. Any questions about that?
Here, descending is on department ID, right? Not last name.
That's correct.
Oh.
The type of sort comes directly with no punctuations after your column name. And remember the default, you can add an ASC, which is ascending. So if you don't have descending, then it's defaults to ascending. So yes, that's sorting the department ID, last name is ascending. Because there's no.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. So our terminology for this particular section, order by ascending, and that's the indication of ascending. Remember, the ascending is the default. So simply not placing a type of order, it will default to ascending. Yes, Vera.
I was just wondering, isn't DESC also used for the describe command?
Yes, so you do have to be very careful. This describe command goes before your column name. Descending is always within an order by clause. So good catch there. So
Okay.
yes, it's the same. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And then order of execution. Remember, if you have multiple columns, basically just associate the order by, but know that the select command, the from is first, and then the where, and then the select, and then the order by. Just remember that. From, where, select, order by. All right. Our final topic for this module or section is introduction to functions. Now we're going to have a lot of fun. Functions are just like any other language or scripting. They're designed to do a specific thing, but we're going to get into that. So identify appropriate applications or objectives of single role functions in query statements. Classify a function as a single or multi-role. Differentiate between single and multi-role functions. All right. So our purpose here, and these are always a lot of fun. When cash or card is read by a vending machine, something happens between the time the funds are accepted and the item selected is dispensed. Yeah, something happens, or it's just magic. We're all going to believe it's just magic. It's not really anything special. The transaction is processed internally by the machine. Ooh. Your funds are the input, and then the item selected is the output. So the machine performs a function. That's kind of your loose analogous explanation of a function. So the function counts the funds, ensures the selection is made, returns a change if necessary, and if cash was used. So if necessary and cash was used. So that is kind of an indication of kind of a real life function. So you don't see all of this happening, but this is all happening in the vending machine, right? So that is kind of an analogy of a function. So in Oracle and any other SQL language, there's many types of functions, and they're all used to transfer input to output. Then that's generally the case. So you use a function you're going to provide some type of input to it, expecting an output that will help you with, managing your data. So yes, these functions are used to manipulate data. And functions literally are just small programs or small scripts or however you want to indicate those that perform an action on a value or column to produce an output. And that will be a multiple choice question sometime. And this is kind of a pictorial indication of putting together a function. Functions have both input and output. Input is referred to as an argument, and that's in every language that you can think of. And then, you have your function or your black box or your orange box, as I have here, and you have the output. So in the vending machine, we have funds or change or whatever. We place it into the vending machine and we get our item, which to me today was a Pepsi. Okay. So I tapped my card and got a Pepsi. That's my example of vending. There you go. All right. So in Oracle, basically SQL, there are two distinct functions, and they're single row and multi-row or multiple row. And this is a good representation here. Single row, it has a single input, produces a single output, multiple row, and has multiple output, but it still produces a single output. And I will talk about these a little bit now and more next week. So no panicking. So what's the difference between single row, and multi-row? Single row functions operate on single rows only and return one result per row. One result per row. Remember that. And there are different types of single row functions, including character, number, date, and conversion functions. So one result per row. So multi-row function can manipulate groups of rows. So we're going to get into group functions, etc., to give one result per group. Remember that, groups, one result per group. The functions are also known as group functions, and we will get to those. So one result, this is a group, one result per group. And yes, we will talk about or speak to multi-rows. I do a nice little picture. It took me a long time to put this together. Are you, and the colors, are you proud of me? Anyway, sorry. Single row functions can be used to perform calculations such as rounding numbers to a specific decimal place, to modify individual data items such as converting character values from uppercase to lowercase. And someone had asked me before about dealing with the case in your data. Yeah, you do have a function to help you with that. Format dates and numbers for display, such as converting the internal numeric database data format to a standard format like currency. Convert column data types such as converting character strings to a number or a date. This can be performed by a function, and you'll see, I think I do have some examples. Single row functions accept one or more arguments and will return a single result per row. I said that before. Applying the single row function to 12 rows will create 12 results. In summary, single row functions do the following: manipulate data items, accept arguments, and return one value. Return one result per row, and that's the key. The single row functions can modify the data type, can be nested. Whoops, I don't do that too fast. And there's several ways to, showcase functions, but I'll give you one example. Here we go. Select lower. Now we're just changing anything that's in that database for last name to lowercase. So you can run this, and basically you see that all of the names coming out of the employees table are now all lowercase. And that's the function lower. And this is usually the syntax. It's the function, and then whatever you're operating on is enclosed in the parentheses here. All right? And you can, and there's several things that you can do with that, and we will go over that a little bit more with all this types of function. Excuse me. Another function in SQL is round, and basically it rounds a number. So this one here is rounding it to the first digit. So up or down. Remember, if it's higher than 5, it goes up. If it's lower than 5, it goes down. This is indicating to the first digit on the right of the decimal. So if you look at the commission percentage, and maybe I should have indicated, so basically it's going to round. And if you want to run this without the round, of course you would take out the 1. All right. You're saying, let's do this so I can see. So, all right. I have to make sure. Commission percentage from employees. I'm going to add a where it's not null. So we get the 4 results. Is not. So what I'm doing here, I'm going to show you the commission percentage, right? Select commission percentage on employees where commission percentage is not null. And you get the 4 results here, right? 0.2, 0.3, 0.2. So if we put round, which is not, this is not a big deal. And we have to, it has 2 parameters. We need to tell it what to round it to. 1, and this is not such a big deal, but see there, is now rounded to 2, 3, 0.2, 0.3, 0.2. And now it's 0.015 or 0.15, now it's 0.2. Everyone see that?
So just to make sure, so if you did like 3, it would bring it into 3 decimal places, like, or 3 numbers after the decimal, right?
But since we
Oh.
know, see, now we did 3, but we know it's rounding the third. So, and that's a
Okay.
0. So now it's back down. It's not really rounding anything. And even if you did, what if we did 2?
I guess like 3 would be the max then.
Yeah. Well, for
Okay.
this value, sometimes you may perform a calculation and may have several digits on the right side of the decimal. So then you definitely want to use, let's see, if we do something like divided by 50. But now, that's not going to help me illustrate. There. So I'm performing a calculation in here, and now it's rounding to that third spot. And we so generally it's not going to go beyond in this calculation unless you're producing something like a variance or where it'll be several. But that's just telling you can round it so to clean up your data output. That's the key here, if needed. Commission percentage is not necessarily a good one, but at least it gives you a nice clean output of data. All right. All right. All right. So now you're like, well, and we will get to essentially a list of all, well, some of the single row functions, lower, upper, round. But let's talk about multi. I will expand upon this as we go through functions. We have 2 weeks of functions. So multi-row or group functions can take many rows as input and return a single value for output. The rows input may be the whole table or a table split into smaller groups. So examples of multi-row or group functions are max, find the highest value, min, find the lowest value, average, find the average. Actually, it should be AVG as far as the function. Let me change that. Don't want to give you the wrong information. Min, average, that finds the average. So those 3, and there are others, but these 3 I can show you an example of. So, and I didn't show you count, even though I'm using count. Count is a multi-row function because it counts, and specifically this count star in the parentheses, and it's just like a wild card. It'll count the number of rows in your table indicated. And so because if you want truly the number of rows, you do want to use this particular syntax, because if you don't, nulls are not counted. So as far as values, so that's generally where you want to use if you're interested in the count of number of rows. This is the way that you would want to indicate that. And then here's an average. Select average salary as average salary from employees. Remember, this is multiple rows because we're using the whole table and we're creating an average. All right, does that make sense? Okay. All right, and we will continue our little journey into functions. This is just the first part to get you going. So single row function in our terminology, multi-row function. So basically, remember single row, one record in, one record out, or one row in, one row out. Multi-row, you can select the entire table or a subset using conditions of a table as far as your result. Let's see. I think that's all I have as far as terminology. And that's all I have as far as a lecture. So any questions before I go through the module itself on the lecture? Remember, I will post the lecture in the module. This is module 3. All right. So what I'd like to do now is tell you what you have to do. We're now into module 3. We're moving right along. I will post a lecture here. First, we have some videos as usual that will basically talk about the where clause, our condition, our restriction, our filtering of rows, the order by. And in this particular one, both these videos are very good for illustrating a complete idea of what's as we continue to learn more about filtering and the where clause. All right. So those are the videos for our module. And then we have our test queries or our practice queries. Our logical operators. This is actually called a truth table here. If you're wanting to illustrate what the and the or does based on the conditions, like condition 1 or condition 2, that's very useful. We have our rules of precedence in here. There's 9 of them. Make sure you review that. One thing I didn't stress a lot here was nulls. Nulls are treated quite a bit different when it comes to ordering and some of these single row functions. We are going to talk about that next week. There's not too many in here. Nice things to practice on. Hopefully you're all doing that, because that will definitely help you both before you go into the practice and even preparing yourself for the quiz and the assignments. Yes, there's 3 sections of practice as they correlate with the lectures for the week. 3.1 logic. Oh, this is the solution, but 3.1 is logical comparisons and precedents. And I've ordered them in the way where you go through the practice and then the solutions are right after. Yes, please go through these. They will make more and more sense if you run some of these queries and do some of these exercises, which I think most of you are doing. And the thing with this, with these practice, if you don't necessarily have to run them unless you need that activity to get your brain working. But the solutions are there as well to check your work. You want to do it that way. It's always a very good way to practice. And I'll say again, the best thing to do in this class is to go through these practices to prepare you for the assignments and also prepare you for the midterm, for the exams. All right. And then you have your normal assignment, which basically follows the same structure as the practice. You can once again, you can download the doc, go through try it, solve it. I think we have 10 of them again. And make sure you add your query, or you can just add a screenshot of a developer if you download this, it's just a Word doc. So you can copy paste or screenshot paste your queries and your responses based on the exercise. All right. Okay, so that's the assignment, 20 points, 2 points per, and then your quiz. One thing I do want to point out, the quiz will close at midnight on the 9th. So these are both through the 9th, so make sure you go through those. And is that me? No, that's not me. All right. All right, so another relatively easy week. Module 3. And those of you that are overachievers saying that the class is way too hard, it is going to get more difficult. So, and just to give you a preview, we're going to continue with functions next week. We're going to get it, and the week after. So we do have 3 weeks of functions. We're going to get into more details with it, but for module 3, yes, pretty straightforward. Any questions, comments, aspirations? We're all good with this, right? No one's going to have a headache or be stressed about it, right? Absolutely, you're doing very well. You're all doing very well. So just continue the great work. Once again, the due date is the 9th or Sunday. Unless there's extenuating circumstances, you all are pretty good about it. As a matter of fact, I appreciate that you're all not procrastinating, waiting until 10 o'clock on Sunday. That's always good because I like to get the grading out of the way. All the institutions that I teach for have a Sunday due date. So after 8 o'clock, I just go to bed. See, I'll just do it on Monday. And then I don't have time on Monday. So, but anyway, any questions, comments? Yes, Vera, go ahead.
Just a small question. Since it sounds like we're going to be exiting lecture early or today, would you mind publishing the slides early today?
Sure, I will publish them
Perfect.
early. And
Awesome. That way I can go back through them and take more notes. So
great. And I just generally just wait for the video. It takes a few minutes to process, but I will, just because you're very nice in your request, Vera, I will post them right after we get done.
appreciate it.
Anything else? All right. So yes, we're finishing a little early. It's always a very long day for me because I'm in here at 6 in the morning, but that's all right. I don't mind. I'm not really a night owl, but I can make it. I'm not even sleepy because I had that Pepsi. But anyway, another pretty easy week. They were up early last week, so I was surprised when they went. Oh, gotta go. All right. Mackenzie. All right. Okay, thank you all. I will post the lecture slides right away, and the video recording will come later. But all right, keep up the good work. You're all doing well. You're one of my best classes so far, so keep it up. No one slack off. It will get harder. Those of you that are waiting for things to get more difficult, it will get harder, and there'll be more tasking, more to do. So, but for now, just relish the fact that it's not so hard yet. All right. Thank you all. I will see you all next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.